The trip that changed everything, I gave my parents a luxurious 1-week trip to Europe with me. When I picked them up to go to the airport, they told me they decided to go with my jobless sister instead of me. My mother smiled with that familiar, dismissive warmth. Your sister needed some rest, so we decided to take her. I didn't say anything, my throat constricting with unshed tears and rage. They had a big surprise waiting when they landed in Europe. One that would shatter their expectations, as completely as they had shattered my heart. You're late, my mom said, as she stepped out onto the porch, pulling her suitcase behind her with an air of practiced impatience that immediately made my stomach clench. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard. It was 6:02 a.m. 2 minutes late, but somehow those 2 minutes felt like a lifetime of disappointment compressed into digital numbers. Mom, I said, forcing a smile that felt like swallowing broken glass. I'm sorry. I got out of the car to help with the luggage, my hands already trembling with an anxiety I couldn't yet name. But then I saw her, my sister Lauren, emerging from the house with her own suitcase in tow, a smug expression painted across her face, like she'd just won the lottery. My forced smile froze, then crumbled completely as the blood drained from my face. What's going on? I asked, trying desperately to keep my voice steady as my world began tilting off its axis. My mom turned to me, her expression far too cheerful for the emotional massacre she was about to deliver. Oh, Violet, we decided Lauren should come instead. Of you. She's been so stressed lately and she really needs this trip. The words hit me like a physical blow to the chest. My ribs felt like they were caving in, crushing my lungs until I could barely draw breath. Instead of me, Mom? My voice cracked like thin ice. I've been planning this for years. I paid for everything with my own blood, sweat, and tears. She waved her hand dismissively, as if my shattered dreams and financial sacrifice were nothing more than a minor inconvenience, like I'd simply mentioned the weather. And we're grateful, sweetheart, but you're always working so hard. You can take another trip later. Lauren needs this right now. Lauren didn't even have the decency to look guilty or ashamed. She just smirked with the confidence of someone who had always gotten everything handed to her, shifting her weight onto one hip with practiced entitlement. Thanks for understanding, sis, she said, her tone dripping with fake gratitude that made my stomach churn with nausea. I stared at the two of them, my heart pounding against my ribs like a caged animal desperate to escape this nightmare. The morning air suddenly felt suffocating. My dad shuffled out a moment later, his eyes glued to the ground like a coward, avoiding eye contact as he handed me his suitcase. This is unbelievable, I whispered, my voice shaking with the weight of years of accumulated hurt and disappointment. This was supposed to be our trip. Something special for me to share with you both. Well, it still is, my mom said with that same infuriating, oblivious smile that had dismissed my feelings my entire life. Just with Lauren instead. Don't make this a big deal, Violet. Your sister really needs a break from her stress. My name is Violet, and for the past 2 years, I've been working overtime like a woman possessed, sacrificing my social life, my hobbies, my peace of mind, saving every spare penny to give my parents a trip they'd never forget. I researched flights for months, compared luxury hotels until my eyes burned, planned guided tours with the meticulous care of a wedding planner. I planned every detail down to the last dinner reservation with the desperate love of a daughter who just wanted to make her parents proud, who wanted to see them smile because of something I had accomplished. But as I stood there in my parents' driveway, watching my sister slide into the backseat of my car like she had every right to be there, a devastating realization crashed over me like ice water. It didn't matter how much effort I poured into this family. It didn't matter how much I sacrificed or how hard I worked. In their eyes, Lauren would always come first, always be more deserving, more needy, more worthy of their consideration. I clenched my jaw until my teeth ached, biting back the sharp, angry words that were burning on the tip of my tongue like acid. Instead, I forced what felt like the last smile I might ever give them. Let's get going then, I said, my voice sounding hollow and distant, like it was echoing from the bottom of a well. If they wanted to prioritize her over me after everything I'd done, fine. They could go with her. But I wasn't about to let them. Enjoy it. Not on my dime, not after they just ripped my heart out and stomped on it without a second thought. The drive to the airport was suffocatingly quiet, except for Lauren's incessant, mindless chatter that felt like fingernails scraping against my already raw nerves. Oh my gosh, Mom, did you see that TikTok about Paris? I can't wait to go shopping. There with the money I didn't have to spend. Do you think we'll have time for that? Or will the tours take up the whole day? My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned bone white, and I could feel my pulse throbbing in my temples as I stared straight ahead, forcing myself to stay silent while my heart bled. My mom chuckled softly, completely, oblivious to my pain. Of course we'll have time, sweetheart. We'll figure it out when we get there. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted copper. When we get there. They didn't even seem to notice that I wasn't part of that we anymore. I had become invisible, a ghost driving them to steal my own dreams. At one point, my dad cleared his throat with the uncomfortable awkwardness of a man who knew he was participating in something morally wrong, but lacked the backbone to stop it. Thanky. You for driving us, Violet. I know this probably feels unusual. I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, seeing the guilt written across his weathered face like a confession he was too cowardly to speak aloud. Unusual? That's an interesting way to put it, Dad. My voice was sharp enough to cut glass. He didn't respond, just shifted uncomfortably in his seat like a child caught stealing, probably wishing he'd kept his mouth shut and his conscience buried. Lauren leaned forward from the back seat, her voice grating against my ears like nails on a chalkboard. You're not mad, right? I mean, this is really big of you letting me go instead. I could never have afforded this on my own. You know how broke I am. The casual, thoughtless way she dismissed my sacrifice, my heartbreak, my financial struggle, made something deep inside me crack like a dam about to burst. But I forced another smile, this one feeling like it might shatter what was left of my soul. Of course, Lauren. Enjoy every moment of the trip. By the time we pulled up to the airport, drop-off zone, my patience was hanging by the thinnest of threads, ready to snap at any moment. As I helped unload their luggage, each suitcase felt impossibly heavy, weighted down with my crushed dreams, my abandoned plans, and the bitter taste of betrayal. My mom gave me a hug that felt like a mockery, her arms around me while her heart was clearly elsewhere. Thank you for understanding, sweetheart. This means so much to us, and to Lauren especially. I nodded stiffly, my throat too constricted with unshed tears to trust my voice. Sure, Mom. Lauren beamed as she wheeled her suitcase toward the entrance, practically glowing with excitement while completely oblivious to the emotional wreckage she was leaving in her wake. Thanks, Violet. You're honestly the best sister ever. I stood, there like a statue, watching them disappear into the terminal, my chest so tight with pain that each breath felt like drowning. The ride back home was a blur of tears. I refused to let fall and rage I could barely contain. I replayed every cruel moment, every thoughtless word, each one cutting deeper into my already bleeding heart. This means so much to Lauren. You're not mad, right? You're always working so hard. I parked in my driveway and sat in the car for what felt like hours, gripping the steering wheel until my hands cramped, letting the full weight of their betrayal wash over me. Then, with a sudden surge of determination I'd never felt before, I marched into the house. I pulled out my laptop with shaking hands and logged into every travel account I'd painstakingly used to book their dream trip. Hotel reservations, canceled, with savage satisfaction. Tours, refunded with grim pleasure. Airline upgrades, nope, back to cramped economy seats where they belonged. I stared at the confirmation emails piling up in my inbox, feeling the crushing weight in my chest start to lift for the first time in hours. They wanted to take Lauren instead of me? Perfect. But they wouldn't be staying in 5-star hotels or enjoying private tours on my hard-earned money. When I closed my laptop, a sense of satisfaction settled over me like armor. They could explain themselves to confused front desk staff in Paris. I was done being their doormat, their afterthought, their convenient solution to every problem. The phone calls started the moment their flight landed, buzzing with the desperate frequency of people who had just realized they'd pushed the wrong person too far. Was unpacking my suitcase, the one I'd packed so carefully with outfits I'd imagined wearing while strolling through European cities, when the relentless buzzing began filling my bedroom like an angry swarm of wasps. My mom's name flashed across the screen repeatedly, accompanied by increasingly frantic text messages that made my heart race with vindictive pleasure. Violet, what's going on? The hotel won't let us check in. The reservation is missing. Call me immediately. Violet, this isn't funny. Fix this now. A laugh escaped me, harsh, bitter, and completely unlike any sound I'd ever made before. Fix this. After years of being their personal problem solver, they really thought I'd swoop in and save the day after they'd just destroyed my heart without a second thought. The phone buzzed again with a call from Lauren. I let it ring out, savoring each unanswered tone, only for her to leave a voicemail that dripped with the same entitled attitude that had poisoned our relationship for years. Violet, this is so petty, she snapped, her voice sharp with indignation and disbelief. We're stuck here because of you. You need to call the hotel and fix it right now. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the rest, my finger hovering over the delete button with grim satisfaction. For years, I'd been their emotional janitor, the one who cleaned up every mess, smoothed over every conflict, and sacrificed my own needs to maintain family peace. Not anymore. Those days were dead and buried. Eventually, I decided to answer one of their calls, if only to stop the relentless buzzing that was giving me a headache. My mom's voice exploded through the phone like a verbal assault the moment I picked up. "Violet, what did you do? The hotel says our reservation was canceled and none of the tours are booked anymore. We're standing here like idiots." I let her rant for a long moment, actually enjoying the panic and desperation in her voice for once. Then, with a calmness that surprised even me, I replied, "I canceled them." The stunned silence that followed was absolutely music to my ears. "Why would you do that?" she finally hissed, her voice crackling with disbelief. "Oh, I don't know," said, my tone dripping with sarcasm that tasted like sweet revenge. "Maybe because you decided to take Lauren on my trip, the trip I planned, paid for, and dreamed about? You're lucky I even drove you to the airport instead of leaving you stranded on the curb." "We thought you'd understand," she snapped, her voice breaking with the realization that her manipulation wasn't working. "Understand what?" I asked, my voice rising with years of suppressed pain finally breaking free. "That 2 years of saving and planning meant nothing because Lauren needed a vacation? That my hard work and sacrifice were completely worthless to you? Guess what, Mom? I don't understand, and I don't care to anymore." I hung up before she could respond and turned my phone off, tossing it onto the couch like it was contaminated. The blessed silence that followed felt like finally coming up for air after nearly drowning in their expectations. If they wanted to prioritize Lauren over me, fine. But they could figure out the rest of their ruined trip without my help, my money, or my forgiveness. The silence lasted only a day. By the next morning, my phone was buzzing again with calls and messages that grew more desperate and angry with each passing hour. At first, I ignored them completely, spending the day cleaning my house and catching up on work, but curiosity eventually got the better of me. By evening, I opened my phone and braced myself for the inevitable storm of guilt, trips, and accusations. From my mom, "Violet, you've gone too far. Your sister is in tears and your father is furious. We can't get into any of the hotels you booked. This is cruel." From Lauren, "You're acting like a child. I don't understand why you're making this such a big deal. Just fix it already so we can enjoy our trip." And finally, from my dad, "We need to talk when we get back. This isn't right, and you know it." I set the phone down, shaking my head in amazement at their continued selfishness. For years, I'd been the one to fix things, to make sure everyone was comfortable and happy while I suffered in silence. Now that I'd finally taken a step back, they had no idea how to handle basic problems on their own. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat down at my kitchen table, letting the anger simmer and transform into something stronger, resolve. How dare they expect me to clean up their mess after what they'd done? How dare they act like I was the villain in this story they had written? The next call came within minutes, and this time I answered with steel in my voice. "Violet?" My mom barked before I could even say hello. "This isn't funny anymore. We're stranded and embarrassed. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" I took a slow, deliberate sip of my tea, savoring her panic. "Embarrassing? You think this is embarrassing? Try saving for 2 years, planning every detail with love and care, and then being told you're not even worthy of joining the trip you created." "Stop being so dramatic," she snapped, but I could hear the desperation creeping into her voice. "Lauren needed this more than you did. Then she can figure it out," I said firmly, my voice steady as granite. "You made your choice, Mom. You wanted to take Lauren instead of me? Fine, but don't expect me to fund her vacation or fix your problems." "We're family," she hissed, playing her last card. "We don't do this to each other." I let out a laugh so bitter it surprised even me. "Funny, I was just thinking the same thing." Lauren's whining voice came through in the background. "Mom, just hang up on her. She's being impossible and ruining everything." That was the final straw, the last thread holding back years of accumulated rage and hurt. "Enjoy your trip," I said, my voice cold as winter. "Oh, wait, you can't, because it's not your trip. It was mine, and now it's nobody's. Goodbye." I hung up and turned my phone off again, but this time the silence felt different. For the rest of the evening, I felt a strange mixture of anger and relief. Anger that they'd forced me into this position, but profound relief that I'd finally stood up for myself after years of being their emotional doormat. They could call me dramatic, petty, or cruel all they wanted. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bending over backward to please people who clearly didn't value my efforts or respect my feelings. The next few days were blissfully quiet with my phone turned off, giving me the mental space I desperately needed to think clearly without the constant barrage of guilt trips and manipulative accusations. I spent my mornings sipping coffee on my back porch, finally enjoying the peace I'd craved for so long while being their perpetual problem solver. My afternoons were filled with catching up on work and tackling little projects I'd been putting off for months, things that reminded me how capable and accomplished I was when I wasn't constantly bogged down by their endless emotional demands and crises. But by the third day, curiosity got the better of me. I turned my phone back on to find over a dozen voicemails waiting, each one more hysterical than the last. The first few were from my mom, her voice growing increasingly unhinged with each message. "Violet, you need to call me back right now. This has gone way too far. I can't believe you're doing this to your own family. You've completely humiliated us. We're your parents. How could you treat us this way?" Then came Lauren's messages, full of the same entitled, whining tone she'd used our entire lives. "This is so petty, even for you. You're ruining everything out of spite. Just fix it, Violet, so we can actually enjoy our vacation." Finally, my dad's voice quieter, but no less accusatory. "Violet, I don't understand what's happened to you. This isn't the daughter we raised. Call us back so we can sort this mess out." I hesitated before listening to the final voicemail, a long, rambling one from my mom. Her voice was quieter this time, heavy with exhaustion and barely contained fury. "Violet," she began, "we're back at the airport now. The entire trip is completely ruined, and I hope you're satisfied with yourself. Your sister is devastated and crying, and your father and I are, well, disappointed doesn't even begin to cover what we're feeling right now. Call us when you're ready to apologize and talk like adults." I deleted all the voicemails without replying, my hands surprisingly steady. I wasn't ready to talk, and honestly, I didn't know if I ever would be. This wasn't just about one ruined trip. It was the culmination of years of them putting Lauren first while expecting me to smile and accept it gracefully. As the hours passed, I found myself reflecting on all the times I'd been overlooked, dismissed, or treated like a second-class family member. Every holiday where Lauren's whims and preferences dictated all our plans. Every family gathering where my accomplishments were treated as boring afterthoughts, while her latest drama became the center of attention. This trip had been my breaking point, but the cracks in our relationship had been forming for years. I'd just been too desperate for their approval to acknowledge them. That evening, my best friend Grace stopped by unannounced, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing an unmistakable look of curiosity mixed with concern. "I heard about what happened," she said, setting the coffee on my kitchen table and studying my face carefully. "Your mom called me yesterday, fishing for information." "Of course she did," I sighed, taking a grateful sip of the coffee. "And what did you tell her?" Grace shrugged, a sly smile creeping across her face. "I told her you were probably busy living your best life and would get back to her when you were good and ready." I laughed for the first time in days, feeling some of the tension leave my shoulders. "You're the best friend anyone could ask for." "No," she said, her tone suddenly serious and supportive. "You're the best because you finally stood up for yourself." "I know how incredibly hard that was, Violet. Don't let them guilt you into backing down now." Her words stuck with me long after she left. Grace was absolutely right. I'd spent far too many years bending over backward to please people who never seemed to appreciate my efforts or sacrifices. It was time to break that destructive cycle once and for all. By the time the weekend rolled around, I felt a strange but wonderful sense of clarity. The anger was still there, simmering just under the surface, but it was joined by something I hadn't felt in years: genuine freedom. Freedom from their endless expectations, freedom from being the family's designated fixer, and freedom to finally live life on my own terms. But as I should have expected, the peaceful silence didn't last long. It was Sunday afternoon when my phone rang with a call I actually decided to answer. My dad's name appeared on the screen, and something in me decided it was time to hear what he had to say. "Violet?" he began, his voice heavy with exhaustion and something that might have been regret. "Your mom wanted me to call. She thinks you'll listen to me." "Go on," I said, leaning back in my chair and bracing myself for another guilt trip. He let out a long, weary sigh. "Look, this whole situation has gotten completely out of hand. Your mom's upset, Lauren's furious, and honestly, it's just a mess. But you're better than this kind of petty revenge." My spine stiffened, his words igniting a fresh wave of anger in my chest. "Better than what, Dad? Standing up for myself? Refusing to let you all walk over me again? That's not what I meant," he said quickly, backtracking. "It's just, you've always been the reasonable one, the one who keeps our family together. This isn't like you." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You're absolutely right. It's not like me, because usually I'd be bending over backward to fix your problems and clean up your mistakes. But not this time." He was quiet for a moment, And I thought maybe, just maybe, he was finally starting to see my side of things. But then he said the words that shattered any hope I had left. "You're punishing the entire family over one decision. Is that really fair?" "Fair?" I repeated, my voice rising with years of suppressed frustration. "You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you and Mom decided I wasn't important enough to join the trip I planned and paid for? Was it fair when you replaced me with Lauren like I was completely disposable?" "That's not what we were trying to do," he said, his tone becoming defensive. "We just thought Lauren needed it more than you did." "Of course you did," I snapped, the words pouring out of me like poison finally being released. "You always think she needs more attention, more support, more consideration, more everything, and I'm always the one expected to sacrifice and smile about it." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, he said quietly, "I don't know what you want me to say, Violet." "I don't need you to say anything," I replied, my voice steady, but final. "I just need you to understand that I'm done being the family afterthought. From now on, I come first in my own life. Goodbye, Dad." I ended the call and set the phone down, my hands trembling slightly. For the rest of the day, I let myself feel everything. The anger, the sadness, the relief, the fear of what came next. It wasn't easy, but it felt like the beginning of something new and necessary. I wasn't their designated fixer anymore, and I wasn't going to be. They could figure out how to solve their own problems for once. When my parents and Lauren finally returned from their disastrous trip, I was waiting for them in their driveway. I'd parked there an hour early, sipping coffee from a travel mug, and feeling surprisingly calm as I watched their taxi pull up to the curb. As they stepped out, dragging their suitcases behind them with obvious exhaustion and irritation, their faces told the whole story. This had not been the luxurious European vacation they'd expected. Lauren was the first to speak, her voice sharp with accusation. "Well, I hope you're satisfied, Violet?" I raised an eyebrow, staying comfortably seated on their porch swing. "Satisfied with what exactly?" "Our trip was a complete disaster," my mom snapped, waving her hand dismissively as if the whole experience had been beneath her dignity. "We spent the entire week staying in disgusting budget hotels and eating terrible food because we couldn't afford anything decent. And don't even get me started on the tours," Lauren chimed in, crossing her arms with dramatic indignation. "Oh wait, there weren't any tours. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it was to show up at tourist attractions, only to be told there was no reservation?" I took another slow sip of my coffee, letting their complaints wash over me without affecting my newfound sense of peace. "That sounds really tough," I said finally, my voice calm but tinged with satisfaction. "But you wanted to take Lauren instead of me, remember? I'm sure you all had some wonderful bonding time." "That's not the point," my mom shot back, her voice rising with frustration. "You knew we couldn't afford all the luxury things you'd planned. You deliberately set us up to fail." I stood up slowly, setting my mug down on the small table next to the swing. "No, Mom, I didn't set you up for anything. I planned an amazing trip for the three of us, something special that I'd been saving for and dreaming about for 2 years. You're the ones who decided to cut me out at the last second." My dad finally spoke up, his tone quieter but no less accusatory. "You didn't have to cancel everything, Violet. That was extreme and vindictive." "Was it?" I asked, folding my arms and looking directly at him. "Tell me, Dad, why should I have paid for a trip I wasn't even invited to take? If Lauren needed a vacation so badly, you should have planned and paid for it yourselves." "You are so lucky," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "that I didn't cancel your return flights too." Lauren rolled her eyes with typical dramatic flair. "You're being so incredibly dramatic, Violet. It's just money." "And you're so incredibly entitled," I shot back, my patience finally snapping completely. "Do you have any idea how much work and sacrifice went into planning that trip? Or do you just assume that nice things magically appear because someone else always takes care of everything for you?" They stood there, stunned into silence by my unexpected backbone. The old Violet would have already been apologizing and trying to smooth things over. "I've spent years being the responsible one," I continued, my voice steady but filled with conviction. "The one who fixes problems, plans events, and makes sure everything runs smoothly. And you've spent just as many years taking it all for granted, treating my efforts like they're worthless." "That's not fair," my mom started to protest, but I held up my hand to stop her. "No, Mom, what's not fair is how you've treated me. You chose Lauren over me, like you always do. So I chose to stop being your doormat. You didn't want me on the trip? Fine. But you don't get to enjoy the benefits of my hard work and sacrifice without me." I grabbed my purse from the porch swing and turned to leave, feeling lighter than I had in years. "I'm glad you're all back safely," I said over my shoulder, "but don't expect things to go back to the way they were. Those days are over." As I walked to my car, I could hear them calling after me, their voices a mixture of anger, guilt, and desperation. But I didn't look back. The drive home from my parents' house felt strangely peaceful and liberating. For years, every visit had left me emotionally drained and questioning my own worth. But this time, I felt stronger, more confident, like I'd finally found my voice after years of silence. When I got back to my own house, I made a cup of tea and settled onto my couch, replaying the confrontation in my mind. They'd been so certain I would fold, that I'd give in and apologize like I always had before. But watching their shocked faces as I walked away was a powerful reminder of how much I'd changed. They could be angry, hurt, or embarrassed. It didn't matter to me anymore. I was done living my life to meet their unrealistic expectations and constant demands. The next day, my friend Grace called, eager to hear how everything had gone. "How did the confrontation go?" she asked, not bothering with pleasantries. I laughed, leaning against my kitchen counter with genuine amusement. "Exactly like you'd expect. They're furious. Lauren's pouting like a toddler, and Mom is probably plotting new ways to guilt me back into compliance." Grace let out a delighted snort. "Let her try. You've got a backbone now, and I'm here to make sure it stays firmly in place." I grinned, grateful beyond words for her unwavering support. "Thanks, Grace. I mean it. You've been my rock through all of this." "Anytime," she said warmly. "So what's next for you now that you're not playing the role of family fixer anymore?" That question had been circling in my mind since the confrontation. What was next for me? For years, so much of my emotional energy had been devoted to trying to please my family and earn their approval. Now that I'd let go of that exhausting burden, the possibilities felt endless and slightly intimidating. "I don't know yet," I admitted, honestly, but for the first time in my life, I feel like I get to decide. Not them, not anyone else, just me. "That sounds like the beginning of something absolutely amazing," Grace said, and I could hear the genuine pride in her voice. Over the next few weeks, I started making small but significant changes that felt revolutionary in their own way. I redecorated my living room, replacing the hand-me-down furniture from my parents with pieces that reflected my own style and personality. I spent weekends exploring local cafes and hiking trails, things I'd always meant to do but never made. Time for a while I was busy managing their constant dramas. Most importantly, I started journaling, writing down my thoughts, dreams, and goals, without filtering them through the lens of what anyone else might think or expect. Each small step felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that I hadn't even realized I'd lost. One evening, I sat down with my laptop and opened the detailed spreadsheet I'd used to plan the original trip. The canceled reservations stared back at me, but instead of feeling a pang of regret, I felt a surge of determination and excitement. That money had been meant for a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I wasn't going to let their betrayal rob me of that opportunity. I closed the spreadsheet and opened a new browser tab, typing in solo travel destinations for strong, independent women. A few weeks after my parents' return, I booked a solo trip to Italy. Not the same itinerary I'd planned for them, and definitely not about proving any point. This trip was purely for me, a celebration of my newfound independence and my decision to finally put myself first. The moment I stepped off the plane in Rome, I felt a surge of excitement mixed with nervous energy. I'd never traveled alone before, but as I navigated through the busy airport and into the vibrant city, I knew with absolute certainty that I'd made the right decision. I spent my days wandering ancient cobblestone streets, marveling at ruins that had witnessed thousands of years of human history and indulging in incredible meals at charming little cafes where no one expected anything from me except to enjoy myself. There was no schedule dictated by other people's preferences, no one else to consider or accommodate. Just me and the glorious freedom to do exactly what I wanted, when I wanted. One afternoon, while sitting on the Spanish steps with gelato in hand and the warm Italian sun on my face, I pulled out the journal I'd brought with me. For years, I'd written about goals and dreams that were always somehow connected to making other people happy or earning their approval. Now, as I wrote in the shadow of ancient Rome, my focus had completely shifted. Learn Italian fluently, start my own photography business, travel to at least 10 more countries, alone if necessary, buy a house that's entirely mine. Never again compromise my happiness for people who don't appreciate my efforts. The list grew with each passing day, every goal a reflection of the authentic life I wanted to create, not the one I'd been expected to live by people who took my sacrifices for granted. On my last night in Florence, I had dinner at a small family-run restaurant overlooking the Arno River. As I watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant shades of orange, pink, and gold, I felt a profound sense of inner peace that I'd never experienced before. This trip had been so much more than just a vacation. It was a transformation, a rebirth, a powerful declaration that I was worthy of beautiful experiences, regardless of whether anyone else appreciated my efforts. I'd spent so much of my life desperately trying to earn my family's love and approval, but sitting there in the heart of Italy, I realized something that changed everything. I didn't need their validation to be complete. I was enough, exactly as I was, all by myself. When I returned home, my parents made several attempts to reach out, their messages notably softer in tone and more carefully worded than their previous angry demands. "Hope you had a wonderful trip," one text from my mom read. "Maybe we can all sit down and talk soon." I stared at the message for a long moment before setting my phone down without responding. I wasn't ready to engage, and for the first time in my life, I was completely comfortable with that boundary. This time, any conversation would happen on my terms when I was ready, not because they decided it was time to smooth things over and return to the old dysfunctional patterns. As I unpacked my suitcase and placed souvenirs from Italy on my shelves, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride and accomplishment. These weren't just trinkets from a trip. They were symbols of my independence, my courage, and my commitment to living authentically. A week after returning from my transformative trip, I received a call from my mom. This time, I felt emotionally strong enough to answer. "Hi, Violet," she began, her tone unusually soft and tentative. "How was your trip to Italy?" "It was absolutely amazing," I replied, keeping my voice neutral but honest. "Life-changing, actually.